Mrs. Audrey New, this is the second time. You are another one of my returning guests. And I tell you what, I am so excited that I actually have returning guests. But you are special because you are the first returning guest to receive my coffee cup.
I am so appreciative. I love it. I love the hair. The ego in my hands.
Yes, the ego in your hand. And I'll tell you what, because I want to give you a little bit of a plug here too. And also if you want to give him a coffee cup, by all means, just let me know. But please detail to us what you have going on.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Everybody knows the county conventions are coming up on March 11th. So if you are not going to the county convention, you want to be at the James Lindsay event being put on by Truth in Education. There are a couple other speakers there as well, but James Lindsay is my go-to guy. He is phenomenal. I listen to him all day, every day. He runs through, he's very academic, so it can be hard to get through, but if you want to know what's happening, how it's happening, he is your guy. And yes, I will give him a mug.
Audrey, it's so funny because I listen to James Lindsay pretty often myself. I mean, the guy, he's gone down the academic rabbit hole with all of this stuff. And I'm ADD. I'm so ADD. It is ridiculous how ADD I am. And, when I'm listening to him, I have to actively crunch my toes, in my shoes, to be like, listen, pay attention, because it's really important stuff. Right. He says really important things, and he's able to articulate it in such a way. Maybe the word isn't articulate. Maybe it's more he's dug down to the point of where it's all begun, and then he's worked his way back up as to what it looks like in current culture. And it's an awesome expose of information.
It is phenomenal. I will say it's not for everybody. My husband has a hard time listening to him only because he gets so mad at how far this has gone and how far back it actually started. So it's helpful. I listen to him when I'm in the gym. It helps get the frustration out.
I heard that. So Audrey, I always love having you on because you and I identify very much as cultural conservatives. I would put myself in that pocket. I would put you in that pocket. But so I want to ask you a question though. In regard to all of this, I've been working down at the Capitol. I shouldn't say working, interning down at the Capitol, given an intern programship at KSU. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I've heard people discuss it, but I'm actually physically seeing it now is that you have the presence of a cultural conservative and you have the presence of a fiscal conservative. Now, you and I, who identify this culture and kind of understand the importance of pushing back against said culture, and we're talking about the woke agenda here, things of that nature. I find it interesting, that perhaps we need to start having the conversation of how fiscal conservatives and cultural conservatives can go about coming together in addressing that issue. I don't think it's happening right now. I think it's wanting to happen. I think people want to see it start happening. I'll give you an example real quick. It's up in Tennessee. They just recently banned, I assume they just banned, given this podcast that we're doing right now, it might have changed between now and then, but they banned the public readings for drag queens up in Tennessee. So there is a cultural thing that's going on, right? Down in Florida, an example of fiscal is Ron DeSantis ordered the universities to do a very comprehensive review of finance that has gone into the DEI programs, the equity and inclusiveness, at universities, and programs that kind of go into that at colleges in Florida. So there is a fiscal. But what's devoid is that in Tennessee, you don't necessarily see a fiscal response with a cultural response. In Florida, you're not necessarily seeing a cultural response with the fiscal response, right? And that's what I want to start talking about a little bit, is that disconnect and where perhaps we can start connecting and where Georgia can learn to start connecting in regard to that. Do you have any opinions on that matter?
I have so many. Yes. First of all, there's a multi-tier process for funding coming into education, K through 12 in particular. The college is a little bit different, but my lane is K through 12. So you can start down at the very bottom with free resources for teachers. There are private foundations, the big names. You've got the Gates Foundation, you've got the Walton Family Foundation, which that one's a little bit of an interesting story. they all provide, the NEA Foundation is also a big one that provides free curriculum to teachers. You don't have to do anything to get this curriculum. The school district does not have to purchase it. They do not have to be on a list. I, as a parent, can go to the NEA Foundation website, pull this curriculum down, and it will tell you exactly what to teach. It will tell you what activities to attach to the that lesson. It will tell you what conversations to have. It actually, we've talked before about the ties to the woke garbage basically being tied into math in particular, which is the one that throws everyone off. They hear, ELA or a political science class or something like that and think, well, of course it's there. They never think to look at math because that's through a conversation. But the details on how to do that are laid out for free for the teachers. So that is step one. Step two is different schools around have parent-funded foundations. So these foundations, again, they do fundraisers throughout the year to raise money. Businesses come in and sponsor. And I want to be very, very careful to not make blanket statements because these foundations do a tremendous amount for these schools. But it's dependent upon the parents that are in there. Some schools may have a foundation, but it really doesn't do much. It doesn't raise much money going in. But then there are schools that are getting, computer equipment paid for by the foundation and things like that. But they can also purchase different programs and curriculums that can then be used. Now, they are supposed to align with the policy of the school district. But as we've seen, there are ways to get around that. So that's so you have your free resources, you have your parent-funded foundations that can purchase, that is not tied to tax dollars. It is not really approved by the district. And so if there's an issue and someone says, well, just file an open records request and that's how you'll find out, it's not going to show up because it's not taxpayer dollars. It's foundation money. Then you have a little bit further, you have the bigger private grants that are your Gates Foundation, the Walton family. And that one in particular, the Gates Foundation has focused more on technology and math, and they're collecting data on your kid, but that's a different conversation. The Walton family actually originally started out with theirs. Again, I am talking hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into charter schools in underdeveloped areas, which when this originally started was fantastic. Sam Walton saw a need and he stepped up as a private individual to fix that need. And that's what we're missing on the conservative side. So his intention starts out good. He's doing good things. The charter school thing didn't really necessarily work out as way he thought, because it turns out you need more than just money to make a school work. So fast forward to he's on the second generation of heirs for his foundation, and now they are heavily involved in privately funding and offering grant money for drag queen story hours, for a lot of very heavy LGBTQ programs for teenagers and younger. So, and here again, that's something that it's very difficult to fix, because from a legislative standpoint, in the same way that conservatives would not want the federal government coming in and telling them how to raise their children, we have to hold that to the same thing. Like, the federal government should not be coming in and saying what a person can and cannot do with their child, with exceptions. Obviously, there's abuse, there is sexual exploitation, which is what has happened with these drag queen story hours. I know most people don't see the videos of them, but they are absolutely horrific. Yeah.
No, Audrey, I gotta stop you there for a second, because I recently saw a video about the whole drag queen story hour thing, and it was absolutely heinous, is to put it lightly. I mean, I quite literally dressed in leather, and I'm not talking full body leather. I'm talking straps were barely holding, things together, if you know what I mean, and dangling from the roof and doing all these, sexual things. Would you like to know what age group was that? What was there?
Oh, those were very small children.
Oh, very, very small children, about 3 to 4 years old, kind of small children. That is That is insane to me. And, we're bringing up kind of an important topic here, Audrey, and, wanting to try and stay on the fiscal topic here, because, man, I will go down this rabbit hole. I will absolutely go down this rabbit hole. But wanting to stay on the fiscal topic is nothing is free. We talk about how, for example, you say like the NEA or whatever will provide this curricula for a teacher or for a school to, to adopt or whatever. There is always some kind of strings attached to this stuff, right? And that's what I want to talk with, because in terms of culture, it's like you and I understand how to address culture. And I'll give an example, about what this may look like after, you talk here. You and I know how to address culture. But, what I don't know, for sure don't know, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, but one particular thing that I don't know is how to address, the finance, how to address the fact that we have these strings attached. So can you talk to me a little bit, or rather enlighten me a little bit, of what those strings look like and how it is they kind of operate?
Sure. So with your bigger grants, which can, again, you have two different scenarios on that. You have the privately funded grants, which are through these big foundations. And then you have publicly funded grants, which is federal tax dollars coming in. And they can be literally for everything. There are grants money for new school buses. They're, literally everything. The problem is, especially under the current administration, is if you accept this grant money, now you have to accept our transgender policy, or now you have to accept our SEL policies. And it's the SEL thing is another sticky issue, which we can talk about later, but it's coming in and saying, here's your money. And oh, by the way, now you have to do this. And once you take that money, you're tied in to it. So coming back in, I think the biggest fix is that conservatives need to step up. There are plenty of big money conservatives, and it's time for them to take education as seriously as the left has taken it. Time and time again, what we hear, especially when you're looking at legislation, is here's the financial fix, or here's this piece of legislation, check it off the box, now that problem is solved. The problem is that's not how the left thinks. They think very long term. So as we're going through this and looking for the solution, trying to find the solution, that's how we have to think. So our legislation looks good, and there's voucher money coming in, and now you can take your child and move them over to this school, and very minimal strings attached with testing and making sure the standards are being raised, which is fine. But what happens 5-10 years down the road when we have this system in place and there's maybe someone else sitting in the governor's seat who has different priorities? Or how is our legislatures going to handle federal money coming in? And we've taken a stand against, transgender policy. Georgia has taken a stand on especially boys and girls sports in particular. But now we've accepted this grant money, and we have to accept the transgender policies. So that is where it becomes very, very difficult to detach from it.
I want to kind of detail to conservatives watching right now what this could potentially look like. We had recently, I don't know, if it's gone all the way through the system at this point, depending on when the podcast gets put out. But we have a voucher kind of system going through where it's like, okay, $6,000, of allocation is going to go towards students and parents, being able to help with school costs. Right? Which is all well and good. When you review that bill, you're like, okay, well, this seems nice. Okay, you've got this standard. Okay, that's great. Okay, nothing's really going to change here. They just have to meet the qualifications that the legislation actually puts forth for them to qualify for the grant money, right? And right now, it's all well and good. Now, here's the thing. It's like fiscally, conservatives are saying we can do this. We have the budget, we have the money, it's coming in, it's fine, we can allocate this. But here's the thing. You also put in there that the individual has to qualify, right? A committee has to, how do I say this? An individual has to qualify given that they meet a standard. The standard is set by a committee. So, okay, let's take this and let's cement that. And you talk about, 10, 15 years down the road. Okay, well, now let's take it on the cultural conservative side. Where Democrats, left-leaning individuals have permeated culture in such a way that it's changing the ideology of the young towards a more leftward degree, right? Well, okay, they grow up and they become members of the committee that, regulates what is the standard, right? Well, okay, well, now the standard is that you have to teach LGBTQ history to receive this money. Okay, well, you as a parent, let's just say hypothetically, you as a Christian, right? Let's just make this absolutely outrageous while we're at it. You as a Christian are like, well, no, I don't want to teach my kid, LGBTQ history. That's against my religion. Well, it's like, well, I'm sorry. Well, if you want to continue, receiving this voucher money that we have for you or this grant money, you're going to have to teach that. It's in the law, otherwise, I'm sorry, we're just going to have to take it away. That is the importance of understanding the importance of the cultural conservative who understands, this whole cultural movement and possibly what it could look like 10 to 15 years down the road, combining efforts with the fiscal conservative, the economic conservative, who understands that, who understands budget, who understands allocation, who understands finances, and writing legislation in such a way that it combines efforts, it combines knowledge base to kind of paint a picture for you guys. Here is the issue at hand. Let's take a school, Audrey. Let's just take a school. It's a hypothetical school, right? We have two situations. We have a teacher that is teaching SEL, social emotional learning, okay? She's doing her thing. She's in a math class and she's bringing up all these, socially cultural issues that don't even need to be discussed. And on the school level, you have them accepting grant money. It can't just be cultural Republicans going in and telling this teacher to stop teaching SEL. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, we did it. We got her out. She's done indoctrinating my children. Great, wonderful. Well, guess what? You still have the grant money issue. You still have the money flowing in where it's telling the school that you have to teach these certain things. Okay, well, now let's flip it on the other side. The fiscal, Republicans go in and says, we're going to snip off these lines. You can't accept this grant because it's teaching this stuff. Well, guess what? Now you still have the teacher in there who's teaching SEL. It's two different beasts, and they have to be attacked at the same time with a coordinated effort. And I think that's something that we're kind of alluding to here. This isn't necessarily a talk in terms of like addressing where money is coming from, as much as I think this is a talk addressing the fact that, hey, conservatives, it's time to combine knowledge bases to write legislation that is going to teetotal beat this woke ideology that's going through our system.
Correct. Yes. So it comes down to, tremendous efforts are being made because we are seeing this culturally. Literally, the kids are surrounded, and we've talked about that before, where they turn on the TV, they pull up their phone. It's in every ad. It's in, I think I just saw Hershey's now has a transgender spokesperson. It's literally everywhere. So I believe I heard it at one point, it was 2 to 3 generations between an idea in a classroom and legislation. So that becomes the key. As our kids are moving, and I have talked to conservative parents that they feel like they did everything they knew to do, and their kid has still chosen this other path, and they don't know what to do. Okay, so understanding that while the intentions may be good right now, here's what's happening, and at that end of the culture, what do we look like in 2 to 3 generations with our legislation, knowing that once the door has been opened publicly with public funds, anyone can just walk right on through it, right? Switching back to the private side, it's time, and we're seeing this a little bit, like PragerU has done a lot with kids stuff. The Daily Wire is putting, I think it was $100 million into kids programming. So we are beginning to see it, but we are so far behind the curve that we need, honestly, big money conservatives to step up and realize that if a school is looking for a grant, if you have a school district, be it private or public, that is looking specifically for money for a solution because they don't have enough money coming in through tax dollars. And that's the case, in the state of Georgia where we live, in the metro area, it's very easy to think, oh, wow, these private schools have, $1 billion budget. They're fine, but what we don't see here is that in other parts of the state, there are towns that are tiny towns that are being held up by their school district. And if that school district goes, the entire town goes. So it's that type of scenario where private money just steps right on in. You know, that's on the NEA Foundation. That's one of their big things is Southern states community schools. And they very specifically say Southern states, that they are coming in looking for these areas to pour money into for a school that specifically focuses on what they call the whole child, which means every minute of that child's life they consider to be their business, whether or not they're on school property.
Well, Audrey, we've got a couple minutes left, and I think you kind of alluded to it just a little bit, but I want to reiterate it. What would be your answer? What would be Audrey New's answer to this whole thing? You know how it is. We come to the dinner table, we come to the coffee table, and we fix all the world's issues. How would Audrey New fix this issue?
If I could snap my fingers and fix it, I would have big conservative dollars I would match basically what the left has already done, and I would do it on the right. Because let's be honest, they've done a really good job. And I firmly believe in giving credit where credit is due. They saw a mission, they tackled it head on, and they put their money where their mouth was. And on our side, we're seeing a lot of talk. And again, we're seeing trickles, here and there of money starting to go in, but we're not seeing it at the same level and the same determination. Our side has been focused on legislation. When it's, as we've said before, for every piece of legislation, for every policy in place, for every administrative rule in place, they already have 5 ways to get around it. That leaves our hands tied. So it is time for conservatives, honestly, both sides, I come the grassroots side, your cultural conservatives, and then your fiscal conservatives to come together, to have a conversation around a table, and on some points agree to disagree, because we're humans and that's going to happen, but start understanding that this is a problem that has to be tackled together and marrying the two.
Absolutely. Well, Audrey, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for coming back to my little humble abode here, my little humble coffee table, and enjoying a cup of coffee with me. I hope you enjoy your coffee cup.
This will be my new favorite coffee cup.
Oh, your new favorite one?
Yeah, my new favorite one.
My ego on a coffee cup is your favorite coffee cup? Well, I think that just boosted my ego. Audrey, seriously, thank you so much for coming. Cheers, great talk, and I will see you next time.